Chapter 389. The next day, after Jingwan woke up, she seemed to have completely forgotten about this matter. She had been back for so many days, but there were so many things that had delayed her preparation of the small banquet. Now the imperial court was in a mess, but it had nothing to do with her, so it was better to organize the small banquet. Thus, Jingwan led people and began to prepare the invitation in high spirits. The small banquet was small, so there were naturally not many people. There were only a few older sisters and younger sisters, which was not enough to count with one hand. At most, there would be one more hand. In this way, the invitation could be very casual, but it could also be very meticulous. Jingwan specially made it and spent a lot of effort. First of all, this post was not a square post, but a beauty post. It was a very vivid picture of a beauty. At first glance, it looked very similar to the person who was about to be sent to. However, if one looked closely, it was not the real person. It had no form, but it was full of spirit. It was not easy to achieve this step. At the very least, one had to understand their temperament very well and grasp their biggest characteristic. Obviously, Jingwan did very well on this point. At least after she drew it, the people around her recognized who it was at first glance. After the invitation was drawn, there were other things to decorate it, including the words inside. It looked very beautiful. At first glance, it did not look like words, but like an exquisite painting. Looking carefully, it was indeed word by word. It was clear and could not be mistaken. It was the opposite of the beauty on the face. Jingwan spent an entire day just to make a few invitation. This also meant that during this day, Li Hongyuan would definitely be neglected by her. The living king of hell turned into a vinegar jar in seconds. If Jingwan did not stop him in time, her day's hard work would have been ruined by Li Hongyuan. This guy was very likely to act up when he was jealous, so Jingwan did not argue with him and showed a little grievance. "My day's hard work, are you really going to ruin it for me?" There was a hint of, "Why are you so bad?" in her eyes. Li Hongyuan's face darkened. Looking at the invitation, it was as if he wanted to kill someone. Jingwan reached out and hugged his waist. The pretentious look on her face disappeared without a trace. She smiled and said, all right. Are you really angry? It seems that you are also busy today." Li Hongyuan reached out and picked up a post. It happened to be Sun Yijia. This time, Jingwan did not stop him. She believed that Li Hongyuan would not really destroy it. Ever since Wan started drawing the portraits of beauties, he has drawn quite a number of them. That portraits of 12 beauties should be about done, right? Since you're so free, why didn't you draw one for me? His dark expression did not improve at all. Jingwan chuckled. Although he didn't say it, Jingwan knew that he had been thinking about it from the beginning. Now, he finally said it out loud. Wan thinks it's funny? Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched Jingwan's chin. It was as if a storm was gathering in his eyes. If it had been someone else, they would have been scared to the point that their legs would have turned to jelly. However, Jingwan was not afraid at all. She tilted her head with a smile, broke free of Li Hongyuan's shackles, and rubbed against his body. "No matter how beautiful those beauties are, they are just mediocre in my eyes. How can they compare to my husband, who is peerless and handsome? This is the best. Of course, it has to be the most meticulous and perfect." It had to be said that Li Hongyuan felt a lot better in his heart. However, he asked, "Are you comparing me to those women? How can that be? Even if the whole world is added up, they can't compare to you. However, Yuan must be very beautiful in women's clothing. He will definitely be the most beautiful." Jingwan smiled a little slyly. Li Hongyuan pinched her face and said, "You said so much. This is your purpose, isn't it? Speaking of which, at Great Elder Princess's birthday last year, you obviously got to wear women's clothing. However, you openly cheated because of your unruly character. In the end, you even played a game of thrill." Li Hongyuan sneered without hesitation. It's you who don't dare to let me wear women's clothing, right? However, Wan, if you really want to see it, I can satisfy you. Naturally, there are some things that only Wan can see. Hearing this, Jingwan's eyes lit up slightly. At that time, Jingwan had already dreamed of this man's beauty. However, at that time, she only dared to think about it. Now, it was different. This man had agreed to it. Thinking of those famous men who were very famous in women's clothing in her previous life, they were not feminine at all in normal clothes. However, when they changed into women's clothing, they were so beautiful. Moreover, most of their women's clothing was in ancient costumes, which were easier to hide some of their body characteristics. Needless to say, this man in front of her would definitely be more fascinating. The way Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan now was a little bit like the way He Zhihai looked at her. Li Hongyuan slightly narrowed his eyes and said, Wan seems to be in a good mood. No, it's difficult. Jingwan immediately retorted. It doesn't matter. I allow it. Li Hongyuan felt it was funny. This is what you said. You can't go back on your words. Jingwan turned around and called Qing Zhu and the maids over. Make 2 women's clothing for Prince. They must be gorgeous, elegant and beautiful. The servant girls looked at each other. Was it really okay to make women's clothing for Prince? Although Li Hongyuan's clothes were mostly made by the embroiderers in the Wang Fu, they were mainly responsible for Jingwan's clothes. However, it wasn't that they hadn't made women's clothing for Li Hongyuan before. They were good at making women's clothing. Even complicated palace clothing wasn't a problem. Now, they were going to use Prince's measurements to make women's clothing? They secretly glanced at Li Hongyuan's expression. There was no helplessness, no unhappiness. There was only pampering and indulgence. Looking at their Wang Fei, he exuded an aura of, as long as you're happy. They silently lowered their heads. Alright, they should have seen it clearly. This kind of small matter, Prince would definitely not do anything. And Wang Fei wouldn't do anything that was truly excessive. Therefore, no matter what it was, there was no need to make a fuss. Since it was ordered, they just had to do it. Yes, Wang Fei. The servant girls responded in unison. Wang Fei, is it urgent? Do you need to rush it? Then Qing Zhu asked again. There's no need to rush it. Just do it at your normal speed. Although she was looking forward to it, she didn't want to squeeze them dry. If she really wanted to rush it, they would definitely be able to finish it in less than 2 days. They wouldn't cut corners at all. But when the time came, they would all have dark circles under their eyes. Then, Jingwan turned back and handed the points to them. Send it out tomorrow morning. Now, they wouldn't be an eyesore under someone's nose. After dealing with this matter, Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan with a smile. Yuan will definitely be the most beautiful woman in the world in women's clothing. Speaking of this, Jingwan was suddenly startled. Because she thought of the imperial noble consort. Everyone said that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Similarly, more than one person said that Li Hongyuan looked like his mother. There was even a time when they looked at his face and became absent-minded. Yuan, what do you think if I draw your women's clothing and give it to Imperial Father as a birthday gift? Although it was said to be drawn according to the living king of hell, but if it landed on the painting, it was very likely to be the imperial noble consort. Li Hongyuan understood Jingwan's meaning in a flash. He was a little unwilling, but if Jingwan wore a protective amulet called Luqingdi, there was obviously no harm. Even when Jingwan made a small mistake, Li Hongyuan didn't need to deal with Luqingdi. She would be protected by Luqingdi. So he nodded. Take it out separately and give it in your own name. As for Jin Qin Wang Fu's share, you can prepare another one. If it's like this, then forget it. Currying favor with Luqingdi, the essential purpose was still for Li Hongyuan. She didn't need it at all. Even if it was the imperial noble consort in the painting, it was drawn according to her own husband. How could she easily let others take advantage of it? Li Hongyuan seemed to have seen through her thoughts. It's fine if you keep your husband's portrait. What's the use of keeping the imperial noble consort's portrait? Wan, what are you thinking? This husband knows. With his attitude towards me, there's no need to use a painting to add flowers to the brocade. It's better to use it on you. Is Yuan unable to protect me? Jingwan chuckled. Naturally, he can protect you. But in the end, it hasn't reached that point. With him here, you can be more casual now. Jingwan was speechless. What casual? Wasn't it just spreading her reputation as a jealous woman? In the end, who was the one who caused this? Jingwan accidentally said this out loud. It's not wrong to say that it's me, but Wan, do you dare to pat your chest and guarantee that you're not a jealous woman? Li Hongyuan teased. Jingwan opened her mouth and was speechless. Although there was an essential difference between her and a jealous woman. If he had a bunch of people around him from the beginning, she would never have given him her true feelings. She wouldn't be jealous. The fact was that he gave her the right to monopolize him. However, according to the current standards, she was more than a jealous woman. She was simply a super jealous woman among jealous women, the one at the top of the pyramid. So, your husband is just publicizing a fact, right? Li Hongyuan was quite righteous. Jingwan snorted. She was the one who had benefited greatly. It was just a bad reputation. What was the big deal? Li Hongyuan took her into his arms. Wan didn't care, but he cared. So what if she was jealous? Now she just couldn't get rid of it. Wan would be the best wife and the best mother. The so-called virtue never depended on how many women she arranged for her husband. There was still time now. Jingwan left Li Hongyuan's arms uncomprehendingly and continued to draw. It wasn't the painting of the 12 beauties, but a portrait of Li Hongyuan. However, she had secretly drawn it behind Li Hongyuan's back. Because he hadn't been by her side for a long time, the painting wasn't completed yet. Jingwan only opened a part of it at this time, only revealing her feet and the hem of her clothes. At a glance, it was obvious that it was a man. It couldn't be anyone else. Li Hongyuan was no longer jealous and reached out to open it. Jingwan hurriedly reached out to stop him. You're not allowed to look now. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. Even the maids have seen it. I'm not allowed to look? Who told you that the maids have seen it? Except for me, no one has seen it yet. Li Hongyuan was a little surprised. After all, in the past, when Wan painted, there was basically a maid beside her to serve her with the brush and ink. Since that was the case, he naturally wouldn't insist on looking. I'm looking forward to it. I'll show it to you as soon as I'm done. Okay. Seeing that she might want to continue, Li Hongyuan decided to leave so that she wouldn't be careless with her painting and be suspicious of him peeking. There was no one else around. Jingwan unfolded the painting paper and quietly stared at the man standing with his hands behind his back. To be honest, she had used an unprecedented amount of energy to draw this painting. In fact, it was quite slow. She wanted to try and see if it could reach the level of surrealism. It was as realistic as a photograph. She had never tried it before. Although fine brushwork was more realistic, it was still different from surrealism. In her previous life, surrealism was usually reflected in oil paintings. However, there were also people who tended to surrealism in fine brushwork, and it was quite popular. Jingwan wasn't sure if she could complete it, but she would do her best. Even if she couldn't reach her goal, she would still complete a perfect painting. With all her attention on the painting, time passed very quickly. Very soon, an hour had passed. The sky was about to turn dark. Li Hongyuan crossed his arms and leaned against the door. He quietly watched Jingwan paint. The painting itself was as beautiful as a painting. Jingwan inadvertently raised her head and saw Li Hongyuan. She was startled at first, but then she smiled. Li Hongyuan also revealed a gentle and affectionate smile. It's getting late. You've painted quite a lot today. Don't tire yourself. You can slowly paint in the future. Jingwan nodded. Okay. She waited for a while. When the painting was dry, she put it away. As for the other things, there would be someone else to take care of it. The next day, after breakfast, Jingwan's invitation was sent out. She didn't set the time for the afternoon, but the next day. Other than a few close friends that Jingwan had made when she first came to the capital, her 2 cousins and her sister-in-law, little Wang Shi, there were also 2 people that she had made friends with at the summer residence last year. Needless to say, Sun Yijia, Yuan Xiaoqiao, and Zhou Yingshuang. The small banquet was mainly for them. Her 2 cousins and little Wang Shi were mainly there to support them. As for the other 2, they were essentially just there to accompany her. Although they might not be that attentive, Jingwan didn't have any bad intentions towards them. Of course, if they minded Jingwan's reputation, they could refuse. In fact, after Jingwan's words at Prince Kong Bao's residence were spread out, the wind had indeed changed a lot. To a certain extent, they were all married women anyway. Being close to Jingwan outweighed the disadvantages. It had to be said that other than Sun Yijia, everyone else, including Yuan Xiaoqiao and their in-laws, were very surprised when they found out about the invitation. After the surprise, although other emotions were mixed up, joy still prevailed. They were also very happy. Of course, there were also a few who felt annoyed and thought that their mother-in-law wanted them to take care of their sister-in-law. In the end, their attitudes were rather firm when they refused. They didn't want to offend her and instead, annoy her. In the end, although their mother-in-law wasn't happy, she didn't force it. No matter what it was, Jingwan would do her best to do it well. Although she couldn't be considered a perfectionist, she was still attentive. Because Zhou Yingshuang was pregnant, she specially instructed the kitchen to take care of her diet. From this point of view, Jingwan actually hadn't changed. She was considerate and tried her best to be considerate of others. Jin Gan persuaded Li Hongyuan in every way possible and offered compensation in all sorts of ways before he finally agreed to give her almost the entire day. Half a day later, they arrived one after another. Jingwan personally received the guests. Her clothes were also relatively simple and casual, which greatly reduced some of the things that came with her identity. Originally, not long after Jingwan got married, she went to Jiangnan with Li Hongyuan. After being away for half a year, among them, there was someone who hadn't come into contact with her identity as the princess consort. At first, they were a little nervous, but now, it had more or less disappeared. Therefore, if Jingwan wanted to deliberately do something, it really wasn't difficult. The most impolite ones were still Sun Yijia and Yuan Xiaoqiao. They linked arms with Jingwan and chatted casually and naturally. On the other hand, Zhou Yingshuang, who was 6 months pregnant, was a little cautious. Jingwan looked at her stomach and felt rather emotional. The last time we met, it felt like I was sending you off at your wedding. Now, your stomach is so big. Nonsense. When you got married, I was clearly also present. Zhou Yingshuang smiled gently. At that time, it wasn't in my stomach yet. She reached out and touched it. That little thing just happened to move. Zhou Yingshuang softly exclaimed, "It seems that this child likes you, Jingwan." Sometimes, the child's father would wait for a long time and still not see any movement. The first time our family's Xian Jia, moved in her stomach, it was also because of Wan Mimi. Sun Yijia said. This shows that my child's fate is good. The others looked at them chatting and laughing. Even if they were blood sisters, they couldn't be like them and directly call each other by their nickname because they got along so well. Because the Wangfu was big enough and the troupe still rehearsed every day, those performers didn't dare to neglect. After all, when they chose to stay in the Wangfu, it was because they felt that the Wangfu was a good place to stay. Naturally, they had to be ready to perform for their masters at any time. Only when they were useful, could they continue to stay in the Fu. Because of this, not to mention spending a day in Jin Wangfu, even if it was longer, it wouldn't be a problem. For Jingwan, although she always got along with Li Hongyuan and saw each other every day, she wouldn't get tired or annoyed. But now, it could be considered another kind of relaxation. Not to mention the common people, there weren't many people in other high families who could be so idle. After all, too many people didn't know the truth of the matter. They only felt their men's unusually tense emotions. Even if they didn't understand the specific matter, their emotions would be greatly affected. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to relax. In addition to preparing for Lu Qingdi's birthday, the court was discussing how to deal with the envoys from other countries. Naturally, it was Yuan Ruizhong's proposal to increase the military supplies to the northeast border city. The Northeast Army's position in Lu Qingdi's heart was relatively high. In fact, there was another reason, and that was, their provisions were lower than other places. He Jia's army of 100,000 people was 100,000 people. There was absolutely no situation of eating empty pay. In addition, the provisions were generally lower than other places by about 10%. However, the Northeast Army was actually doing quite well. Because He Jia had a high reputation in the Northeast, the common people were willing to provide, and the Northeast Army was also self-sufficient. This kind of worry-free and reliable soldier, no matter who it was, would be very fond of. And this time, Yuan Ruizhong and the others also brought up this point to play the emotional card. The meaning was very clear. Not expressing anything at this kind of special time, Your Majesty, are you not embarrassed? Aren't you afraid that the soldiers will be bitterly disappointed? And the Ministry of Revenue naturally began to cry about being poor out of habit. How much money they used, where and how much they had to spend, what they had to do in the coming year. In short, it could be summed up in one word: no money. At this time, other people were too lazy to argue with the Ministry of Revenue. Do you want to call Jin Qinwang over? Let's not talk about the previous ones, just ask how much he brought back from Jiangnan. Thus, the Ministry of Revenue's people immediately became mute. Let's not talk about what was brought back from the treasury of the 4 counties in Jiangnan. Even if it was said that Jin Qinwang Fei had embezzled it, when it entered the treasury, it was they who counted it one by one. Moreover, the taxes after autumn this year had basically all entered the national treasury. Right now, whether the national treasury had money or not, they were very clear. In reality, even if the national treasury didn't have any income in the next 2 or 3 years, there was basically no problem in the national treasury. The Ministry of Revenue's people rubbed their noses. This reason was indeed untenable. However, once they entered the Ministry of Revenue, they had to develop into a miser. In any case, this reason was gone, so they continued to find other reasons. In short, it was just bickering and bickering. Even if they couldn't be completely stingy, they had to cut off 50% of the items, 30% of the items for 50%, and 20% of the items for the best. The other people were also well versed in the skills of bargaining with the Ministry of Revenue. Things that originally only required 50%, they would first directly double the amount. As the saying goes, when comparing impossible things with impossible things, they could only agree to one. It was obvious what they would choose. Yuan Ruizhong's battle prowess had always been strong. Even Li Hongyuan had to praise his ability. Right now, even if there wasn't Luo Peishan's participation, he could basically settle it. What's more, this matter actually didn't conflict with the interests of all parties. As long as they didn't encounter a situation where they resolutely opposed something that you wanted to facilitate, as long as the amount wasn't too large, it could basically be settled in the end. Therefore, this final situation was actually slightly better than expected. The imperial edict was issued at the first moment. Because this year's situation was actually quite good, after the autumn harvest, a lot of grain was harvested, and the granaries were abundant. The grain transported to the northeastern border city was more than enough from the granaries in the northeast that were relatively close to the south, and there was an additional 3 months' worth of grain for 100,000 people. Regarding this matter, the movement would be faster. There were 20,000 sets of armor and 10,000 sets of various commonly used weapons. After all, they had already been rewarded with 10,000 continuous crossbows. These things were also ready-made, so they were directly transported. In addition, there were cotton-padded clothes, medicinal herbs, and other things, which should take a little longer. However, it was estimated that not long after He Junwei's arrival, the grain would arrive. After that, it would be the armor and weapons, and then medicinal herbs and other things. However, it was easy to say that it was hard to say whether these things could all be in place before the start of the war. However, as long as these things were in place, even if they weren't in He Junwei's hands, the things that Li Hongyuan had people prepare would be in place first. As for how to deceive the world, it was a matter for some people. About 7 or 8 days later, Li Hongyuan's women's clothing was ready. During this period, He Junwei came to visit twice. Jingwan held the clothes for Li Hongyuan. As long as she didn't shake it out, people would think that it was Jingwan's clothes. Jingwan drove away all the servants, indicating that they were not allowed to come close without permission. The others were still confused, but the servant girls covered their mouths and laughed. They felt a little regretful in their hearts, but they didn't want to think about the prince's women's clothing. It was disrespectful to have such thoughts, so they all left and did what they were supposed to do. Jingwan changed the clothes first. Li Hongyuan didn't hesitate and directly took off his clothes. Not only did he take off his outer clothes, but he also wanted to continue taking off his inner clothes. Jingwan hurriedly stopped him. Enough, enough, it's not a tube top or a skirt, just wear the inner clothes. So you didn't prepare a belly band? Li Hongyuan's hand was still on the collar of his inner clothes. Jingwan didn't know what expression to show. She really shouldn't have any hope for this man's bottom line and moral integrity. After all, he was a dignified prince, and he put on women's clothing without hesitation. Don't talk nonsense, hurry up and put it on. Li Hongyuan clicked his tongue, as if he was still a little dissatisfied. Jingwan suppressed the urge to facepalm and watched as Li Hongyuan slowly put on the 2 layers of clothes. Her expression suddenly became a little strange. Well, she was used to seeing him put on his own clothes, so she didn't think much of it. Now that he was wearing women's clothes so smoothly, there was no doubt that one of the reasons was because he would help her put on her clothes from time to time. Thinking of this, Jingwan's face became a little hot. Well, it was said that when a daughter was married, she had to serve her husband. When it came to her, the number of times she served an old member could be counted on one hand. On the contrary, Li Hongyuan served her quite a lot. She coughed lightly and moved her face away slightly. Then, she calmed down and waited for the heat on her face to subside. She put her hands on her hips and looked at Li Hongyuan with righteous indignation. Li Hongyuan saw this and was actually laughing in his heart. Well, in his opinion, Jingwan was just playing hard to get. Her calm and composed look was especially cute. When Li Hongyuan was done with the clothes, without looking at the face, there was basically no sense of disharmony. For example, the shoulders and the other areas were specially widened. The areas that were more close-fitting for a woman to wear were also widened a little, so that the muscles wouldn't show. The hem dragged on the ground, and the sleeves were slightly longer, basically covering the fingers and the back of the hand. Originally, there were calluses on the palm, but looking at the back of the hand, the fingers were slender, and there was no sense of disharmony. Jingwan nodded, indicating that she was satisfied. However, Li Hongyuan expressed that he was not satisfied, and Jingwan asked him why. Don't you feel that something is missing after playing around? Li Hongyuan's gaze fell on Jingwan's chest. Since it's women's clothing, not only are you preparing the clothes, but you are also preparing to do makeup for your husband. Since the big parts are done carefully, shouldn't the details not be sloppy? He said matter-of-factly. Jingwan felt that her head must be full of black lines. Should she say that he was really too dedicated, or that his moral integrity and bottom line were really chewed and swallowed by him? Jingwan's expression was a little serious, and then she looked at Li Hongyuan, who seemed to be very serious. Then, she slowly moved to the side and took out a small box. Under Li Hongyuan's gaze, she opened it and took out the things inside with her fingers. Ahem, since Ah Yuan has asked sincerely, as your wife, I will naturally satisfy you. Take off the clothes. Li Hongyuan looked at the things in Jingwan's hands, and then laughed ambiguously. What are you laughing at? Hurry up and take off the clothes. I am fulfilling your request. The shape of the things in Jingwan's hands was similar to the bra in her previous life, but the two cups were stuffed with fillers, and the inner layer was sewn flat. The other parts were similar to a belly band, and there were a few straps. Jingwan did not make them very big. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 sizes, and only 3 sizes. Jingwan admitted that she was actually a little evil in her heart, and secretly sewed it herself. Compared to Jingwan, who was blushing, the person who was going to use it was quite calm. Wan, since you are already prepared, why didn't you just give it to me when I asked for the belly band just now? Why did you make me go through so much trouble? As he spoke, his hands did not stop moving. Anyway, Li Hongyuan was quite happy to take off his clothes in front of Jingwan. Li Hongyuan wanted to take off his undergarment again. Just put it on the outside of the undergarment. You don't have to take it off. How can that be? Wan is wearing clothes. Don't tell me you want to wear the belly band on the outside of the undergarment? Jingwan felt that her little bit of evil was nothing at all. The living king of hell was inferior to the living king of hell. He was the real devil. After that, Jingwan gave up and let him be. She was too lazy to look at him. It was obvious that his 8-pack abs and 2-pack chest muscles were strong and strong. With that thing tied up, it would be quite an eyesore. When Jingwan was being evil, she did not think of such a scene. Wan, don't you want to come over and help? I probably can't do it well by myself. Jingwan did not know how many times she was speechless. Forget it. If he did not care about this broken pot to the end, why should she care? She went forward quickly. After she was done, she asked him to quickly put on his clothes. She did not want to look at such an eyesore anymore. Li Hongyuan did not dawdle. He put on his undergarment again. This time, his chest was full, and his waist was slimmer. Sure enough, this is more pleasing to the eye. It's just that I'm not used to that thing on my body. Of course, he was not used to it. In her previous life, every girl would be used to wearing a bra at the beginning. It would take some time for her to get used to it. Jingwan looked at it several times. It was really perfect. Then, she asked Li Hongyuan to sit down and started to put on makeup for him. Jingwan was very attentive. It could be said that this was definitely the makeup she put the most effort into in this world. After all, Li Hongyuan was a man. It was impossible for him to put on light makeup. The deeper contours of his face needed to be weakened and covered by makeup. Only when she was putting on his eyes did Li Hongyuan open his eyes and move according to Jingwan's instructions. At other times, he was completely at the mercy of Jingwan. When she asked him to turn his face sideways, he turned his face sideways. He was very obedient. However, he felt that it might take a little longer. After all, Li Hongyuan remembered that the most troublesome time for Jingwan to put on his makeup for him was not so long. However, he was very patient and did not get impatient. After more than an hour, it was finally done. Jingwan felt that she was quite fast. She held Li Hongyuan's chin and looked at it carefully. If she was not satisfied with it, she would slightly modify it. If the imperial noble consort really looked like this, Jingwan would definitely be called the most beautiful woman in the world. This face was really beautiful. Jingwan felt that she was almost addicted to it. Look at Wan's face. Do you prefer my appearance in women's clothes? Li Hongyuan's flame-red lips curved into a faint smile. His eyes with smoky makeup were extraordinarily seductive. In addition, Li Hongyuan was deliberately seducing her at this time. Jingwan almost kissed him. Jingwan exhaled, turned her head sideways for a moment, and patted his face. Don't seduce me. Oh, I believe in Wan's skills. So, if I'm not wrong, this face should be very similar to the imperial noble consorts. Even so, will Wan be easily seduced? He dragged the last word a little dangerously. I believe that even if they have the same face, the imperial noble consort will never be like this. For her, at most, she simply appreciates beauty. So, it's all your problem. Jingwan believed that her husband's current appearance, coupled with his unique seductive expression, made him a real woman. Both men and women would go crazy for him. Li Hongyuan laughed. He was very satisfied that he could seduce Jingwan no matter what he looked like. Next, it's the hair. After saying that, Jingwan was stunned. What? She didn't know how to comb hair, so she cried, obviously, I want to hide the beautiful Yuan and enjoy it alone, but reality doesn't allow me to. Li Hongyuan laughed. Call Nurse Gong in. She might have seen the imperial noble consort. Don't you want to paint? Naturally, the closer you are to the imperial noble consort's appearance, the better. After thinking about it, this was the only way. When Jingwan went out to call Nurse Gong, Li Hongyuan restrained the expression on his face and looked at himself in the glass mirror. He was a complete man. After growing up, he didn't look feminine at all. It was said that he looked like his birth mother. He didn't think about what his birth mother looked like, so naturally, he didn't think about dressing as a woman. Of course, in his opinion, he wouldn't look like a woman if he wore women's clothes. But today, with Wan's magical makeup, he actually realized this point. If his birth mother really looked like this, his father couldn't be blamed for acting like that. In the end, he was still fascinated by her beauty. Li Hongyuan believed that if his birth mother didn't die, until today, his father definitely wouldn't be as infatuated with her as he was in the beginning. That's right, it was infatuation. It wasn't the so-called love. It was only because she was gone that he missed her even more. It was deeply engraved in his bones and blood. Even if it wasn't love, it had become something better than love. Love waned. Great also sneered. In some people's opinion, if his mother was still alive, then there wouldn't be anyone else now. In his opinion, once the feelings were gone, then the things of the past would be dug out. For example, Min Yuhan would be a thorn in Luchengdi's heart. Perhaps he would also hate the imperial noble consort. Then, the imperial noble consort's life might be worse than the ordinary concubines. After all, those concubines were absolutely loyal to Luchengdi. Because of her death, they would only remember the good things. Li Hongyuan wouldn't think about whether his birth mother's death was beneficial to him or not. Anyway, she died before he was born. This was a fact. Even if she didn't die, he would definitely be in a different state. He probably wouldn't have the chance to make such assumptions. Imperial noble consort, Mama Gong's shocked voice interrupted Li Hongyuan's thoughts. Li Hongyuan glanced over and Mama Gong immediately came back to her senses. Even if they had the same face, the temperament and charm were completely different. Very similar? Li Hongyuan asked indifferently. Yes, very similar. It's just that the imperial noble consort has never put on such heavy makeup. Wan wants to paint for imperial father's birthday. Help me get a suitable hairstyle. Chapter 390. Jingwan naturally sensed the subtle change in the atmosphere. Perhaps Granny Gong was just shocked, but her husband, could it be that he was unwilling to wear women's clothing and was willing to sacrifice himself just to make her happy? He was so calm and even shameless before, but was it also to hide his emotions perfectly? If that was the case, there was no need at all. Even if he rejected her, she would not be angry. At most, she would feel a little regretful. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan's expression and knew that his wife had probably thought of something again. However, with the current atmosphere, it seemed that he could not blame her. He beckoned Jingwan to come closer and held her jade-like hand. His expression had already softened. Wan, what are you thinking about? Jingwan did not hide it, nor did she hesitate. Yuan doesn't like this outfit, so take it off. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. It's normal for men not to like women's clothing unless they have special preferences. However, I'm not unwilling. I try it once in a while, and I think it's quite interesting, so don't think too much about it. I was just thinking about something else. That's good. But Yuan, if you don't like something, you have to say it directly. You're the king of hell, so you can do whatever you want. Even if it's because of me, you don't have to force yourself. Of course, you can't touch other women. This is absolutely mandatory. It's the same whether you're happy or not. There's no room for discussion. The second half of her sentence was fierce. I already said that you're a little vinegar jar, but you still don't admit it. Look at you now. Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her face. Who said that I don't admit it? What's a vinegar jar? I'm a sea of vinegar. If I overturn it, I don't know how many people will drown. So, don't provoke me. Yes, yes, yes. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the people of the world. Even the king of hell can't touch thousands of people's lives. Stop talking nonsense. Jingwan couldn't help but hit him again. However, her strength wasn't even enough to tickle Li Hongyuan. Besides, if she hit him too hard, she would also feel bad. Looking back at Nanny Gong, who was as usual, Lin Mengya found that Nanny Gong was smiling. Although Lin Mengya was used to getting along with Li Hongyuan naturally as long as she was in Prince Yu's mansion, she still felt a little embarrassed when she saw Nanny Gong's expression. Granny, I'll have to trouble you. This is what this servant should do. Nurse Gong came forward and stood behind Li Hongyuan. She looked at Li Hongyuan's face in the glass mirror. Wang Fei's makeup skills are unparalleled. For example, they could make slight adjustments on their faces so that they looked completely different. It was a kind of disguise. It was completely different from Jingwan's. In Qiyuan, it was popular for men to dress up as actresses and women to sing as martial artists. In particular, the opera troupes that often went in and out of the inner residence were basically all women. They could play all the male roles. In fact, there were 2 or 3 famous opera troupes in the capital city that were all made up of women. Whether it was men dressed up as women or women dressed up as men, these people looked similar to the other gender in appearance, unlike Li Hongyuan, who was very different. Of course, it was more difficult to do it. This is nothing. It's just ordinary. Thinking of the makeup in her previous life, it was amazing that it was comparable to plastic surgery. Nurse Gong only thought that Jingwan was being modest. Only Li Hongyuan knew that what she said was probably true. Granny Gong thought for a while, then took off the crown on Li Hongyuan's head and combed his hair. Starting from the top of his head, she coiled the strands of hair into a bun. Her movements were quite fast. She didn't need to use clips or anything like that. She used an extremely short jade hairpin and gently inserted it into Li Hongyuan's hair. Jingwan actually quite admired her for this. Of course, this was only the part near the head. When she tied the hair into a bun, she still had to add some tools. Otherwise, the hair would not be able to be pulled up and the corresponding shape could not be made. It should be noted that Li Hongyuan's hair was also very well taken care of. It was soft and smooth. Under normal circumstances, the more it was like this, the harder it was to take care of the hair. However, Li Hongyuan basically did not have short hair. Therefore, he did not need hair oil. After it was done, it would not look coarse. Jingwan was not envious, because her hair was even better than Li Hongyuan's. Jingwan looked at him happily. Occasionally, she would help him or pass him something. The biggest difference between her current life and her previous life was that she did not need to wear a wig. In Jingwan's opinion, the wigs in those ancient costumes were definitely a pain. This time, Li Hongyuan did not close his eyes. Although he could not see the back, he could definitely see the top of his head. In the end, the bun was completed. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. The 9 rings of hair were interlocked. There were a lot of rings, but they were not messy. Each ring was about the thickness of a finger. It looked very beautiful. 9 was the extreme number and was regarded as noble. It was said that during the reign of an emperor, the queen's mother descended to the mortal world. Her beauty was outstanding. Therefore, this combination of beauty and immortality was naturally favored by many and was regarded as one of the noble hairstyles. However, under normal circumstances, it was still suitable for the palace. Although there was no restriction, people below the rank of concubine did not dare to wear such a hairstyle. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? The most noble empress naturally preferred the Lingyun hairstyle. Therefore, Nanny Gong dressed her according to her identity as the imperial noble consort. This hairstyle was very suitable and matched the clothes very well. After that, it was the hair accessories. These things did not need to be said. Jingwan had a lot of them. Not to mention other things, just on this dressing table, whether it was individual pieces or a set, there was no need to look elsewhere. At this time, Nanny Gong did not hesitate. Because earrings were not suitable, she used another hair accessory to make up for it. The hairpin was placed on the head and hung naturally from the back of the ear until it reached the middle of the neck. When the dressing was completed, Jingwan's eyes were shining. Her husband was so beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Nanny, how much does Ah Yuan look like the imperial noble consort now? At least 9. His Highness is a man after all. The bridge of his nose is more prominent. Although the whole outline is covered, the essence is still the same. If it is further away, it should be more similar. When Princess Consort is painting, if you want to be more partial to the imperial noble consort, you can weaken it appropriately. Jingwan nodded to show that she understood. Then she let Li Hongyuan turn sideways and take a few steps back. My husband is so beautiful. The more I look at him, the more beautiful he is. How can there be such a beautiful person in the world? Jingwan's face was intoxicated. She deliberately showed a love-struck expression. She was about to drool. She said that Pei Xiuying looked the most like the imperial noble consort in the past. Obviously, her husband's current appearance was worlds apart. Jingwan even felt that after seeing such a stunning beauty, she would not have any reaction when she saw another beauty in the future. Wan really likes the imperial noble consort more, right? Li Hongyuan said with a gentle smile. Perhaps because the makeup was completed, he was more charming than before. Initially, Granny Gong still missed Li Hongyuan's face a little. However, when she saw Li Hongyuan's expression, that little bit of nostalgia immediately disappeared. When Li Hongyuan's face was expressionless, it was more than 90% similar. But now? Heh. To hell with the similarity. The imperial noble consort was a woman who was as gentle as water. Even if she was extremely beautiful, she was not ostentatious and would not have a seductive appearance. But now, the prince was displaying these qualities to the extreme. For most men, such a woman was very attractive and many women might be envious. However, Nanny Gong had no feelings at all, especially when this man had a bad record. It should be known that because he was good to Jingwan, Nanny Gong had a better impression of him. But Jingwan was different. She had never seen the imperial noble consort. She only knew that this was her husband. No matter what, he was the most handsome in men's clothes and the most beautiful in women's clothes. However, when she heard Li Hongyuan's words, she immediately restrained her expression and became normal. Well, when my husband is dressed normally, he can't help it if he is too obsessed with it. But it is different when you are dressed as a woman. You will only look at it and won't think too much. Really? Li Hongyuan said. He slowly stood up, raised his arms slightly, and straightened his clothes. Needless to say, her aura immediately came out. She was noble, elegant, and magnificent. Empress Sun, noble consort Su, and so on were all inferior to her. Well, he was a little too tall. Although she was not sure, Jingwan was 100% sure that his net height was more than 180 meters. And the 9 bun of immortals was a high bun. Combined, it was definitely more than 190 meters. Even if he stood next to Lu Qingdi, he would not only be crushed by his height, but also his momentum. It was unlikely that any emperor would be able to control such a person. Yep, if she was really a woman, she could try to walk the path of an empress. If she had the same level of intelligence and skills, she might even become the first female emperor in history. Jingwan was thinking about it, but Li Hongyuan had already walked in front of her. Even now, Wan, you don't have to endure it. After all, you are essentially the same. Jingwan glared at him fiercely. Did he have to be so outspoken? Jingwan secretly glanced at Nanny Gong. Nanny Gong just pretended that she didn't understand. I'll leave first. Then the two masters could do whatever they wanted. After Nanny Gong went out, Li Hongyuan was really unscrupulous. He directly hugged Jingwan and kissed her with the current makeup. The scene was absolutely hot and passionate. If it was seen by people who didn't know, the scene would be absolutely beautiful and make people blush and their hearts beat faster. The makeup will be ruined. Let go of me, Li Hongyuan finally let her go. He pinched her chin and said with a smile, let Wan try it. Let's see if she will be impulsive. Jingwan was speechless. Just as he said, they were essentially the same. How could she be indifferent to it? Okay, sit back. It's time to start painting. Otherwise, how long are you going to wear this? If it was a meticulous brush painting, it would be impossible to finish it in a short time. But if it was a freehand brushwork, it would be much faster. This situation might not happen again. So, how could Jingwan let go of such an opportunity? If only there was a camera, there would be no need to beautify or edit the picture, and it would be absolutely beautiful. However, Jingwan was going to draw the shape of the painting that she was going to give to Luqingdi, and then slowly color it. Jingwan roughly figured out the imperial noble consort's temperament based on what she knew. Now, she needed a suitable expression. Jingwan didn't hesitate to let Li Hongyuan do all kinds of poses and expressions, but he didn't seem to be satisfied. Was it because he didn't have the talent of a photographer, or was the person in front of him too special? Li Hongyuan was quite interested. In fact, although he hadn't seen his birth mother, he knew what expression he showed would instantly remind Luqingdi of his birth mother. So, when it was about time, Li Hongyuan decided to do it himself. He sat sideways, supported his chin with one hand, and turned his face to Jingwan. How is it? Jingwan nodded hard. The expression, that's the main point. Wan, it will be very tiring. Let's talk about it when we sketch the face. Thinking about it, Jingwan lowered her head and began to sketch. The paper she prepared was almost the height of a person, but a person couldn't occupy a lot of space, so she had to add the background. Jingwan's movements were very fast, but the sketch was very detailed. After confirming that there was no problem with the proportion, Jingwan left the face to the end. Time passed slowly, and she didn't know how long it had been. The expression. Then, Jingwan raised her head and was stunned for a moment. She was pure and happy. At this moment, Jingwan felt that she was really facing the imperial noble consort. Even if she was wearing a luxurious dress, she didn't feel that she couldn't suppress her. On the contrary, the perfect combination of luxury and elegance made her even more unable to move her eyes away. But it was only for a moment. Jingwan grasped the charm at this time tightly, and she drew as if she was a god. Soon, she finished. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the paper again. Although there was no color, and it didn't feel that three-dimensional, it could indeed be said that a beauty was vivid on the paper. It was no longer Li Hongyuan, but the imperial noble consort. Regarding the background, Jingwan suddenly thought of a good electronic device. There was a zither table in front of the window, and the beauty in front of the table was sitting lazily. She wasn't playing the zither, but was looking out of the window with her chin in her hand. There was a blooming flower tree, and a few birds were either flying or stopping, attracted by her beauty as usual. Then, the beauty seemed to have heard the sound of footsteps. She turned around and saw the person who came, and revealed a pure and happy smile. The picture, at that moment, froze. After the background lines were not painted, Jingwan was stunned. It seemed that she didn't quite believe that this was painted by her. There was no follow-up, but it was vivid enough. The birds can't go away because of her beauty, and everyone who looks at the painting will think that her smile is for him. He will also think that this will be his best, most precious, and favorite birthday gift this year. No, it should be the best in all the years. Li Hongyuan had stood beside Jingwan and looked down at the painting. I can't bear to give it away. Lu Qingdi was such a scumbag. How could he get such a beautiful woman and not cherish her when he got her? What's the use of keeping it? Li Hongyuan would not let it stay when it was painted like this. He can only look at it for a while. The more beautiful it is, the more painful it will be for him. But he will never not look at it. So, it was a vicious circle. She didn't know what would happen to Lu Qingdi. Thinking of this, Jingwan felt a lot better. Putting the drawing paper aside, Jingwan began to paint her own painting. She didn't have to imitate anyone. Li Hongyuan could do whatever he wanted. She didn't have to deliberately pretend to be a woman. Of course, she just didn't act too manly. In fact, from Jingwan's point of view, Li Hongyuan could be in a painting at many times. For example, when he was leaning on the couch, reading, drinking tea, thinking quietly, etc. Even if he was dressed as a woman, it would not be out of place. Unfortunately, it was just a thought. Without a camera, those images could not be recorded. Perhaps when she had time in the future, she would imagine changing his clothes and painting them one by one. Jingwan's freehand brushwork might not be so good, but she was good at grasping the charm. She could make up for some shortcomings. There were a total of 4 freehand brushwork. The poses were different, but each of them had the emotions of Li Hongyuan. Some were cold and evil, some were gentle and affectionate, some were enchanting, some were free and easy. Anyway, they were all different from the imperial noble consort. If the imperial noble consort made people want to take good care of her and even couldn't bear to blaspheme her, then the cross-dressing Li Hongyuan on the paper made people want to pounce on him and strip him clean, whether they were really tempted by him or wanted to conquer him. If it weren't for the muscles, Jingwan also wanted to show him a shoulder or something. However, if she really did that, it would be uncoordinated. But if she wiped off the makeup on his face and painted his original appearance with half of his clothes, she couldn't imagine the scene. She was going to have a nosebleed. However, some ideas lingered in Jingwan's mind and could only be slowly realized in the future. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's little evil expression. She probably thought of something that people liked. Li Hongyuan felt that he didn't mind cooperating at all. Li Hongyuan was still very satisfied with Jingwan's paintings. However, because it looked like a woman, his satisfaction dropped by countless percentage points. Sure enough, he still looked forward to the painting of his original appearance. Jingwan removed Li Hongyuan's makeup. Li Hongyuan changed his clothes and tied up his hair with a crown. The handsome Jin Qinwang returned. Jingwan hugged Li Hongyuan's waist. Sure enough, I still like this the most. Cross-dressing and whatnot can only be considered as fun. Fun? That's not bad. Next time, we can change together. Wan's cross-dressing is also amazing. The key point is, it doesn't affect this husband's impulses in the slightest. Perhaps we can do it again after changing clothes. Jingwan's face was a bit dark. Do you have to keep talking about dirty in every 3 sentences? Is it really okay for you to be like this? You're also a Wang, yeah. Where's the restraint? Where's the value? Li Hongyuan expressed that in front of his wife. What were those things? Could they be eaten? Could they be drunk? The most important thing was, could they make his wife happy? Therefore, Li Hongyuan was really a dragon. A dragon's nature was lascivious. It was the first time that Jingwan painted in the room. Therefore, the bedroom was actually quite messy and needed to be cleaned up. Jingwan carefully put away the painting, no matter whether it was completed or not. However, these things couldn't be seen by outsiders, let alone spread outside. Therefore, it was best to frame it herself. For Jingwan, framing wasn't a big problem. Jingwan had learned it before. At least, it wasn't that good. Ordinary paintings were fine, but the ones that she valued were far from enough. Therefore, should she find time to go back to the Luo family and let her grandfather strengthen his training, or directly find a good female master from outside to teach her? Thinking about it, her grandfather seemed to be very busy recently, so it was better not to disturb him. Jingwan raised this question to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. There's a ready-made one, but you don't use it. You have to go outside to find one. It's not that I'm bragging, but compared to the framing masters, I'm not much inferior. Jingwan was really surprised at this time. To be honest, someone really didn't have the temperament to learn this. Should it be said that a person couldn't be judged by their appearance, and the sea couldn't be measured with a pint pot? However, Jingwan didn't doubt it. Since this man dared to say it, he must be able to do it. In fact, Li Hongyuan was not only good at framing, but also very good at painting. Of course, his paintings were only of one person, and that was Jingwan. That was the only beauty that Li Hongyuan treasured in his heart in her previous life. He didn't paint very diligently. Perhaps one painting a year, perhaps one painting every 3 to 5 years. He painted and framed by himself, all by himself. When he was dying, those paintings were the only things that he designated to be buried with him. It was just that he didn't want to start all over again. After being reborn, Li Hongyuan didn't touch the paintbrush again, because Wan was still alive. He didn't need to use paintings to remember her. Moreover, at the beginning of his rebirth, Wan was only 2 years old. The Jingwan he knew in his previous life was the her after the hardships, so it was definitely different from this life. In this life, before he connected with her heart, he unintentionally called out, Wan twice, and she misunderstood that he was thinking of someone else. If he really kept the memories of her voice and smile from his previous life, how bad would it be? What existed in front of him? There was no need to reminisce about the past. Of course, those 2 unforgettable images were bound to be difficult to erase. So, until now, no one knew that Li Hongyuan was good at painting. It was also because Li Hongyuan never thought of taking out the things that Jingwan took out in her previous life in advance. Otherwise, there would be some things that Jingwan couldn't play with. Jingwan didn't use painting to make Luo Jinghua famous. However, in his previous life, Li Hongyuan really thought that the painting was created by Luo Jinghua. It turned out that it wasn't, and it belonged to his little sweetheart. As for whether it was created by Jingwan or not, Li Hongyuan didn't care. Even if it was brought by Jingwan and didn't exist in this world, it still belonged to his family, Wan. Now it was hanging in Luo Jinghua. One day in the future, Li Hongyuan was bound to return it to its rightful owner. However, Jingwan didn't ask how many things this man didn't know. Their days were still very long, and they could leave it to be slowly excavated in the future. That would also be a great pleasure. After all, perhaps every time they excavated something, it would be a huge surprise. They were an old couple, and they had to occasionally relax. Then Yuan, you teach me. Why don't you just let me frame it? It's not that I can't, but other things are fine, but the one I painted for you can't. I want to do it myself. Before that, I won't let anyone see it. In that case, it's up to you. However, you can take it slow. Don't tire yourself out. How can I? Look at me, I'm very idle all day. If I don't find something to do, I'll really grow hair. What is this saying? Li Hongyuan asked. This is not easy to explain. Something like growing hair, a certain someone had probably never seen it before. Perhaps he didn't even know there was such a thing. Then I won't say. Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan and walked out of the bedroom hand in hand. The entire afternoon had been spent. A bit hungry. Li Hongyuan was a good husband who was 24 filial piety. He passed down the order to prepare the meal in advance. That, because the kitchen was not done yet, because of Li Hongyuan's words, it became exceptionally busy. However, there were enough chefs in Jin Wangfu, the kitchen was big enough, and there were countless people to help. If there was no time to call for other people to cook, the kitchen would definitely have enough food. Usually, this was the case in the Wangfu, and Jin Wangfu did not lack money, so it would only be more abundant. As for the chefs, most of them had followed to Jiangnan, so they were more or less familiar with Wang Fei's taste. As for Wang Ye, there was no need to pay special attention to him. Basically, he would eat whatever Wang Fei ate. In the past, he would not eat it. As long as Wang Fei said that it was good for the body and put it in his bowl, he would eat it. In the past, Li Hongyuan's table was basically filled with meat, but now it was different. It was basically a combination of meat and vegetables. And Jingwan was not a picky eater. Even if there were some dishes that she preferred, she might order it a little more frequently, but she would definitely not eat it for 2 consecutive days. Even if it was the so-called frequent, it would probably be 2 times out of 10. Therefore, if the kitchen wanted to know her preferences, it would really take a lot of effort. Thus, the people in the kitchen naturally did not get any special favor. Of course, it was not all bad. Although there was less competition, naturally there were less dirty things. Moreover, with the reputation of the living king of hell, they naturally did not dare to not do their best. As the saying goes, if you do a good job, you may not be rewarded, but if you do a bad job, you will definitely be punished. In fact, as long as one stayed in Jin Wangfu for a year and a half, they would know that as long as they did their job well and did not make trouble, their days would be very good. It was not like what outsiders said, that Jin Wangfu was a dragon's pool and tiger's whiskers. However, the people in the Wangfu basically would not talk about it. After all, they did not think that they were the best. If there were more people who knew about it and wanted to rush into the Wangfu, then there might not be a place for them to stand. More importantly, when they first came in, they were warned to control their mouths. If they said something that they should not say, they would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. They were not sure if it was something that they should not say, so it was best not to say anything. There was strength in numbers. Therefore, it did not take long for dinner to be served. If one looked carefully, they would still find some differences. Not to mention other things, just the combination was not that meticulous. However, every dish was still perfect, without the slightest bit of carelessness. After the 2 people finished eating, they digested the food and then went to the study room. There were some matters that needed to be dealt with. These matters, whether or not Jingwan wanted to know, whether or not she wanted to participate, it was all up to her. Whenever she wanted to go to the study room, no matter what it was, she would not hide it from her. And the recent matters were nothing more than the things prepared by Li Hongyuan, whether they had been handed over to He Jinwei, and the position of the envoys from each country. Of course, there were definitely other matters. Although there might be a big fluctuation in emotions when seeing it for the first time, but if she was used to it, Jingwan would also be calm and even feel that it was a trivial matter. The envoys from the former Wei will reach the capital in 4 or 5 days at most. They are really fast. Regarding Qi Yuan, they have always been the most active. At that time, the Wei dynasty was larger than the current Qi Yuan and was very prosperous. However, in the later period, it declined very quickly and was overthrown by the officials. However, it was not overthrown. After all, the blood of the royal family still existed. They just gave up the capital and moved to the north, dividing the Wei dynasty. The new dynasty was the Qi Yuan that was later changed by the Li family. Although the remaining part of the Wei dynasty only occupied less than 1/5 of the land, it survived tenaciously. Not only that, but it continued to conquer the north. Later on, it was called the former Wei. Now, it had the national strength that was not inferior to the Qi Yuan. Even if the history of the Wei dynasty was not taken into account, the former Wei existed for hundreds of years longer than the Qi Yuan. The former Wei had always wanted to take back the territory they had lost. However, the former dynasty was destroyed by the Li family, who was born with a peasant background, and a new dynasty was established. At that time, the former Wei did not gain any advantage. It was not known if it should be said that the ancestor of the Li royal family was too valiant. Although the dynasty had changed twice, the former Wei still regarded the current Qi Yuan as a part of them. They had never given up on the idea of taking it back. Therefore, no matter who occupied this territory, they were the enemies of the former Wei. As long as they could cause trouble, they would not hesitate to do so. After understanding this history, Jingwan was actually quite speechless. It had been hundreds of years, and the rulers of this territory had changed again and again. Why were they still thinking about it? They were simply crazy. However, it was not without reason that the former Wei kept thinking about it. After all, compared to the Qi Yuan, most of the former Wei's territory was much more barren. Now, their territory was smaller than the Qi Yuan, but their national strength was comparable. Naturally, they would not give it up so easily. Moreover, after this period of time, the spies left in the Qi Yuan must have sent back the news that the letters of credence had arrived together. As long as they could make the Qi Yuan bad news, it would be good news for the former Wei. Therefore, they did not care who was behind this, nor did they care if there was a problem in their country that they did not know about. Anyway, they had already come out. It was more important to see the joke of the Qi Yuan. It would be even better if they could reap some benefits from it. Therefore, the speed of their arrival was naturally fast. Originally, according to the normal speed, it would have been delayed by at least 10 days. At that time, at least the small countries would have arrived. The big countries, after all, were powerful. They were supposed to be the last to arrive. Now, they were going to arrive early. One could imagine how much hatred there was. 2 princes and a princess. There are as many as 3 influential officials accompanying them. They really think highly of the Qi Yuan. However, speaking of which, the former Wei and the Qi Yuan should be of the same origin. Many of their customs and culture are similar. Even now, there are only a few differences in the language. More than 70% of the words are the same. This is even more so in terms of clothing and other aspects. From what I know, the former Wei places more emphasis on the separation between men and women than the Qi Yuan. Why would they let a princess accompany them this time? With a woman around, it's nothing more than a political marriage. The former Wei and the Qi Yuan will have a political marriage? Moreover, even if it's a political marriage, they should hand over the letters of credence to each other. After everything is done, the Qi Yuan will send someone to fetch the bride. What's going on with the princess? Where's the honor? Where's the face? Shouldn't the former Wei place more emphasis on women? Jingwan was puzzled. Even if they're mortal enemies, they can still marry each other. When there's peace, the princess will naturally be married. When there's war, the princess will naturally be abandoned. There's nothing strange about her being the first to die. As for bringing her along, who knows? Maybe their target isn't the Qi Yuan. Compared to the former Wei and the Qi Yuan, other countries aren't as particular. It's normal for them to send their people directly. Jingwan frowned. 2 countries secretly colluding in the territory of a third country. It doesn't sound reliable no matter how I think about it. Li Hongyuan was amused. Why do you care so much? They're not even worried, but you're still worried. What does this have to do with being worried? I just don't know what those people of yours are thinking. Maybe they think that the most dangerous place is actually the safest place. However, under my watch, I will never let them succeed. Jingwan glanced at him. Not only would he not let them succeed, but based on this person's behavior, it was more likely that they would become enemies if the alliance failed. Li Hongyuan smiled but didn't say anything. So what if they were? When the Qi Yuan wasn't strong enough, it was natural for them to restrain each other and wait for him to deal with them one by one. Speaking of which, in her previous life, the former Wei's target wasn't the Qi Yuan. However, the former Wei's princess fell in love with Li Hongyuan and caused a lot of trouble. In her previous life, Li Hongyuan probably didn't know what to do. After all, the flood in the south seemed to have something to do with the Pei family. Li Hongyuan was blamed and was despised by Lu Qingdi, so he wasn't in a good situation. The former Wei and the Qi Yuan were mortal enemies, but the former Wei's princess fell in love with Li Hongyuan. Who knew what Lu Qingdi would think? It was obvious that Li Hongyuan didn't have a good life. However, it was different in this life. Not to mention that there was no uprising in the south last year. Lu Qingdi was very good to his son, Li Hongyuan. In addition to the throne, he even plucked the moon from the stars. If the same thing happened again, who knew what would happen? In comparison, Li Hongyuan was more concerned about Jingwan's reaction. Just as he was thinking about this, Jingwan suddenly held Li Hongyuan's face. What if the princess falls in love with you? Was this considered telepathy? Look, Wan, you forgot. Isn't this your business? That's the princess of a country. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to make a move? What's wrong with that? If you make a move, as long as you don't kill anyone, it can be considered a small matter between women. Are you trying to spread my reputation of being jealous to other countries? It depends on how you do it. It might not be related to jealousy. Wan, why don't you think about it now? Why should I think about it when there's no sign of it? Besides, this is a matter of national importance. If the decision was made early on, the princess would have been informed in advance to avoid doing something embarrassing. A princess, no matter how noble and favored she is, can't go against her own country. Moreover, how much favor can a princess who is going to be used for a political marriage and brought out in such a way be? Even if she's favored, there must be other reasons for her to be pushed out. In short, she can't surpass her own country. Even if she's going to be married to Qi Yuan, she must be married to a powerful and influential person. So, I'm most likely overthinking this matter. Jingwan pinched Li Hongyuan's face. In the end, it's because your face is too attractive. Tell me, why is a man like you so good looking? So, all of this is still my fault? Isn't it? Then, Wan, what do you think we should do? I've never heard of a man who can ruin a country because of his looks. Jingwan snorted. Maybe you'll become the first man in history. If that's the case, what should I do? Wan, do you want me to be disfigured? Bah, if you want the person who likes you to be disfigured, then you can't be disfigured. Was it wrong to be good-looking? Definitely not. Li Hongyuan knew that Jingwan didn't like him because of his looks. When they first met in the previous life, he still had this face, but Jingwan didn't have any emotional fluctuations. What could move her was never these things. When she calmly accepted everything you gave her, it meant that she had accepted you as a person from the bottom of her heart. I don't know, other than the people from the Ministry of Rites in the Honglu Temple, which of your brothers will be sent to receive them? Li Hongming. The former Wei has always been the most difficult to deal with. Li Hongming is the most skilled among the brothers. Li Hongyuan said with a bit of laziness. Since it's the most difficult to deal with, why not you? Jingwan ridiculed. If you really want me to go, it doesn't matter. But in the hearts of the ministers, they will definitely think letting Jin Qinhuang go. Is it because the border between Qi Yuan and the former Wei is too peaceful? Chapter 391. If you really want me to go, it doesn't matter. However, in the hearts of the ministers, they will definitely think, letting Jin Qinhuang go. Is it because the border between Qi Yuan and the former Wei is too peaceful? Therefore, Jin Qinhuang was quite self-aware. If he were to receive those people, it would make people want to start a war with Qi Yuan. Not to take back their own territory, but to attack the capital of Qi Yuan and destroy the sixth prince of Qi Yuan, Jin Qinhuang Li Hongyuan. Therefore, even though they knew that Jin Qinhuang's battle prowess was very strong and could easily make people stomp their feet and vomit blood, and that he was strong internally, he would definitely be stronger externally, but they didn't dare to let him go. After all, he was an envoy and came with a friendly purpose. If he really just arrived at Qiyuan and caused a mishap, it would indeed not be easy to account for. Compared to the damage that his battle prowess could bring to the enemy, this was a matter that made people feel gratified. As expected, they were more unwilling to deal with the aftermath of the destruction he caused. This was an incomparably troublesome matter. Based on the above, at this time, the ministers and Luchengdi wouldn't mention it. Even if they thought of it, they would resolutely not mention it. However, if anyone had the slightest hint of it, they would resolutely suppress it and treat it as if Jin Qinhuang didn't exist. In any case, he basically had nothing to do before, and now he didn't need to do anything. It would be best if he could quietly be a handsome man. Otherwise, holding his wife and giving birth to children was also fine. Luchengdi ordered everyone to be forbidden from looking for trouble. It was best not to go to Jin Qinhuang's place. If they provoked Jin Qinhuang, it would lead to Jin Qinhuang's appearance. It was a very normal thing. In short, it would be better if Li Hongyuan wasn't lured out of his Qinhuang Fu. These days, Li Hongyuan also basically didn't leave the Qinhuang Fu. However, he was very clear about the matters outside. A few days ago, he even specially went to the imperial court and said that he was willing to relieve Fu Huang's worries because the envoys from various countries had many things to do. Luchengdi almost roared, "Just stay here obediently. That's the best way to relieve my worries." Sometimes, this evil creature liked to go against him. If he told him not to do something, he would do it. If he told him to go east, he would go west. He was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. The stronger his attitude was, the more rebellious he would be. Usually, it was fine, but if something happened at this time, he would lose face. Therefore, he could only wipe away his tears for himself and coax him to go back. If he was really bored, he could take his wife to live in the farmstead for a while and come back for the birthday celebration. There was no one else who could coax their grown-up son into not doing anything and give him a lot of money so that he could be a dandy who only ate, drank, and played. Li Hongyuan told this story to Jingwan as a joke. "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" The people in the imperial court were all pitiful, and the one on the dragon throne was the most pitiful. Even if it's the truth, one doesn't have to say it. If I don't do it, what reason do I have to hide in the mansion? I'm a prince after all. Even if I'm an idle prince, I can't ignore it. This is considered a big deal, and it has nothing to do with the power disputes in Qiyuan. If I go to other countries, they won't try to do anything to me. Without power and influence, it's completely meaningless to form an alliance. Therefore, if it's within the scope of involvement, I won't care about it at all. There will always be people who grumble and show their attitude. If they don't want my help, it's a completely different matter. That's why I said that those people are pitiful. You've calculated everything. He was the one who played tricks and made everyone nervous. In the end, he was the most innocent and the most idle person. If some people knew about this, they would probably complain that God was unfair. In the current situation, even if I don't participate in anything, I still have to be aware that I'm being schemed against. Even if I don't participate in anything, it will still be someone else. The difference is that they don't suspect me for the time being. However, they might find out the clues in the next moment and make me the target of public criticism. Even if they suspect you in the next moment, they will need some time to verify it. Besides, if they can be sure that you're the one who suspected and implicated a series of people, then your subordinates will be too closely involved and too incompetent. According to your style of doing things, the former is impossible. Furthermore, you haven't made any mistakes in your affairs for so many years, so there's no need to doubt their ability to do things. Unless you jump out on your own, it's unlikely that you'll be at the forefront of the storm in a short period of time. Or do you think that you still have too little attention and need to attract more attention? Or are you too bored and need to find more things for yourself to do? Bored? How is that possible? I'm very busy. I'm busy accompanying my wife. Who has time to pay attention to them? Li Hongyuan was lazy. He played with Jingwan's fingers with one hand and fiddled with the pendant hanging from Jingwan's hair ornament with the other. He looked extremely bored. In fact, he didn't feel it at all. Jingwan's heartbeat was a little fast and her face was a little hot. She deliberately ignored these and joked, "You say it as if I'm more important than anything else." "That's the truth," Li Hongyuan said matter-of-factly. "If you can't have the country and I at the same time, will you give up the country for me?" Jingwan raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. "Do you still need to say this?" In his previous life, he had already been an emperor. Even if he hadn't been, he didn't have any obsession with the throne. All his schemes were just for Jingwan to hold up the sky and let her live a carefree life, enjoying the best of everything. And these things couldn't be achieved without power. Jingwan didn't doubt his words. All that was left was feeling touched. "However, if outsiders know, I'll become a demoness who brings disaster to the country. Those who work for you will probably eat me alive. Besides, there's nothing shameful about my identity. This assumption doesn't hold in the first place. Even if I don't become an emperor, I'm still an uncrowned king. No matter who sits on the throne, the country will be in my hands. I won't let one suffer any grievances." Li Hongyuan had absolute confidence in this point. However, Jingwan rolled her eyes slightly. "It's already at that point. Who can stop you from sitting on that throne? Yes, for example, they don't want to sit on it or something." Jingwan felt that this man was really asking for a beating. He had worked so hard, spent so much effort, spent so much energy, endured so much humiliation, and in the end, he got what he wanted so easily. The others did not even see what he had done. Once he got what he wanted, he just let it go and pushed a puppet to work for him. There was no benefit in itself, but he just sat back and enjoyed the fruits of his labor. In front of him, he did not even have the dignity of an emperor. Even if he did not go crazy, he would go crazy. However, Jingwan wasn't sure if he was joking or if he really had the idea that the throne was dispensable. She thought that she understood him, but she still couldn't figure out some of his thoughts. She could only say that this man's thoughts were really unpredictable. Ordinary people couldn't guess. Sometimes, Jingwan was actually very glad that this man didn't hide anything from her. He would show her everything. Otherwise, she would be exhausted to death if she had to play a guessing game. Jingwan didn't know that the core of this body was not normal at all. He had already cultivated to become a spirit. Even an old fox with decades of experience couldn't easily play with him. What's more, he also had the advantage of foresight. Even if there were some changes, he could make corresponding decisions according to the situation. In the previous life, he could become the final winner in the adversity, so naturally, it was not difficult for him to do so now. Jingwan had indeed experienced storms, but compared to him, she was still too far away. Jingwan might have some advantages of a more advanced civilization, but now it was useless. She couldn't play with the intrigues of the regime at all. Li Hongyuan showed her and explained to her, but she was only in the learning stage. It was estimated that during the whole fight for the throne, she wouldn't be useful. However, Jingwan was also quite self-aware. Generally, she just watched and asked when she didn't understand. She only interjected a few words in some small places. She would never open her mouth when it was related to the overall situation. She just watched and learned seriously. Although it wasn't useful now, it didn't mean that it wouldn't be useful in the future. Moreover, Jingwan also wanted to stand side by side with him. She wanted to take on things with him instead of being completely sheltered under his wings. Even if Li Hongyuan didn't mind in her life, she wouldn't allow herself to be useless. Li Hongyuan didn't mind her participation and patiently taught her. He might have the same thoughts. He gave her a chance, and it wasn't that Jingwan couldn't learn. Why wouldn't she grasp it? In fact, Jingwan was actually a very outstanding student. She learned quickly and could often draw inferences from one example. Given more time, she could become a qualified politician. Perhaps she couldn't deal with those old foxes, but it was more than enough to deal with other people. What Jingwan didn't know was that she was now handling some things for Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan asked her to look at those things first and then give her opinions. On the surface, Li Hongyuan seemed to have gone through them, but in reality, he was handling them according to Jingwan's wishes. Jingwan herself didn't feel it, but the shadow guards who were in direct contact with her knew best. It wasn't that they weren't surprised, but more than that, they were moved. Should they say, as expected of their master, his vision was amazing. These people didn't have the idea that women couldn't participate in politics. Anyway, as long as it was their master's decision, then it was right. They only needed to listen to their master's orders. These words don't need to be known by a third person. Jingwan tapped the tip of Li Hongyuan's nose. Look at what Wan is saying. Can this husband go and have a heart-to-heart talk with other people? He didn't mind people who were loyal to him knowing, but there was no reason to take the initiative to say that they weren't. It's getting late, you should go back and rest. Li Hongyuan directly reported Jingwan. Jingwan struggled, but the result was that he hugged her even tighter. She was too lazy to make any more useless efforts. Wrapping her hands around his neck, she whispered something in his ear. Jingwan didn't say a word, he would give a response, even if it was just a "n" sound. Following that, Li Hongyuan really stayed in Jin Qin Wang Fu and didn't go out. It could be said that outside, it was very busy. He was leisurely and happy, but those who were busy like dogs were gratified. Jin Qin Wang usually messed around, but at the crucial moment, he still knew how to act appropriately. That was all they asked of him. Jingwan also calmed down now. Li Hongyuan stayed in the Fu with nothing to do. She also didn't have any opinion, and didn't feel that there was any problem with him accompanying her all day. As for the framing, Jingwan had a foundation, but it wasn't particularly good. Therefore, what Li Hongyuan wanted to do was to point out her shortcomings and then correct them. Jingwan would ponder on it herself, and she believed that the situation would naturally be much better. For Jingwan, Li Hongyuan was definitely a good teacher. He was meticulous, patient, and attentive. Sometimes, he was even more serious than handling state affairs. If it was other people, they definitely wouldn't have such a good life. Just like He Jihai, that special, teaching method, those who didn't know would think that he was the enemy of the king of hell. Of course, most people didn't even have the qualifications to be abused. After Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's framing from beginning to end once, he saw where the problem was. Then, step by step, little by little, meticulously to every detail. Not to mention, after 2 times, Jingwan completely understood her own shortcomings. This progress could be said to be very fast. The areas that still had problems were all her own operations. She believed that it wouldn't be long before she could reach a level that she was satisfied with. That's right, Jingwan only needed to be satisfied with herself. She didn't need to care about the views of Sir, and even more didn't need to care about other people's views. If she was satisfied, no matter to what extent, it wouldn't be a problem. Jingwan practiced framing. The rest of the time, she was painting most of the time. The one that was going to be sent to Luqingdi was naturally the first one to bear the brunt. After all, it was very close to the birthday. As for that painting, Jingwan had put in a lot of effort. She didn't put in less effort just because she wanted to give it to a scumbag. She couldn't blaspheme the imperial noble concubine because of that scumbag. She was a beautiful woman. More importantly, she was her husband's birth mother. She was the one who gave her husband life. Even if she didn't see a Yuan's birth and didn't participate in his growth, Jingwan believed that her motherly love for a Yuan wasn't any less. Besides, the beginning of this painting was quite good. It was even beyond Jingwan's expectations. There was no reason to deliberately ruin a good thing. Of course, with Li Hongyuan personally watching, Jingwan usually focused on painting for no more than half an hour at a time. But when she rested, it usually exceeded 2 hours. In addition, the flowers and plants in the residence also attracted a lot of Jingwan's attention. The days basically passed like this. It was inevitable that during this period, some indescribable things would definitely happen. In the blink of an eye, the diplomatic mission of the former Wei arrived in the capital of Qiyuan. The momentum was quite vast. It could be said that almost the entire capital was alarmed. Of course, it was impossible for everyone to run over to watch. Even so, it was enough to make Le Qingdi and many officials' faces turn black. As an envoy, how could they be so arrogant in other people's territory? How could they be good? However, the purpose of the former Wei was like this. The darker your face and the more unhappy you were, the happier they would be. To put it bluntly, it was a demonstration. If that was all, it would be fine. Unexpectedly, half of the entourage served the princess. Not to mention the imperial guards on both sides of the entourage, there were many carriages inside. The carriage in front was not normal. It was only made with a section of railing carved with lacquered gold. The top of the railing was round, and the surrounding gauze curtains were scattered. It was not completely fixed. When the wind blew, the gauze curtains fluttered. It was originally hazy, but after the gauze curtains fluttered, the figure of the woman inside became clearer. Her clothes were not the usual clothes. From head to toe, simple but extremely elegant patterns were embroidered with gold threads. At the same time, there were many small pearls and gemstones. Her face was covered with a veil, and only a pair of eyes could be seen. Those eyes were very lively and unforgettable, as if they could speak. The carriages behind her were also covered with a particularly fresh cloth, as if they were afraid that people would not know that those things belonged to a woman. There were also groups of beautiful maids walking leisurely on both sides of the carriage. Why did the former Wei dynasty raise a woman to such a high position? However, because the other side had more than one member of the royal family, Le Qingdi also sent one more person. In addition to Li Hongming, the 10th Marquis also accompanied. However, everything had a priority. In this battle, the former Wei was led by their eldest prince, while the latter was led by Li Hongming. They exchanged pleasantries, probed, and feigned civility with each other. It could be said that it was quite exciting. It was the first time they had met, but both of them felt like they had met their match. Unexpectedly, their smiles became more and more sincere. Previously, the Grand Prince of Wei had proposed to pay a visit to Emperor Le Qingdi and had fulfilled the etiquette. Li Hongming had also said that the envoys were fatigued from the long journey and were covered in dust. It wouldn't be too late to meet them after a short rest. One side insisted on meeting, the other side insisted on not meeting. The situation seemed to be in a stalemate. Eldest imperial brother. The woman's voice was as pleasant as an oriole's. She walked over leisurely with several maids. Her clothes were very soft. When the wind blew gently, the hem of her skirt swayed in a large arc. She did not feel frivolous. Instead, she felt like a floating immortal. What's wrong? The former Wei eldest prince chuckled and did not answer. Instead, he introduced them. This is the third prince of Qiyuan. He has been conferred the title of Prince Rui. This is my sister, the Empress's legitimate princess. Her title is Yi Ning. Greetings to Prince Rui. She squatted. Her eyes were full of ripples and seemed to be smiling. Li Hongming's heart flashed with a strange color, but he did not show it on his face. Princess Yi Ning is too polite. The smile on his face was not more or less. He was very elegant and gentlemanly. In my opinion, the eldest prince does not need to refuse. We men do not care, but the princess has always been delicate. It is better for her to rest for a night. Imperial father is a benevolent and virtuous ruler. He will not think that the Wei messengers are rude. The former Wei never recognized this title given by outsiders. They all considered themselves as the Wei. When they gave some face, they would call them as they wished. Princess Yi Ning's eyes seemed to be a little confused and a little helpless. This. The former Wei eldest prince still wanted to say something. In my opinion, it is settled. The post house has been tidied up. If there is anything inappropriate, just say it. Li Hongming took the initiative in a timely manner. In that case, it is better to accept deferentially than to decline courteously. He did not know whether it was because of Princess Yi Ning or because he felt that it was meaningless to continue. After all, they were in someone else's territory. The former Wei eldest prince compromised and took a step back. In this way, everyone was happy. Li Hongming did not continue to follow them. He let the people of the Honglu temple entertain them and went to the palace to report to Luqingdi. After the former Wei messengers entered the capital and arrived at the post house, Luqingdi already knew what happened. What he wanted to know now was how Li Hongming felt after the initial negotiations with the messengers. Li Hongming only used 4 words to summarize: they did not come with good intentions. Moreover, Li Hongming did not see the other prince from beginning to end. The former Wei eldest prince only said that his younger brother was naughty and mischievous, and did not say anything else. However, there was one thing that could be confirmed. That prince had definitely followed the envoy group of the former Wei into Qiyuan city. It was just that he didn't know where he had been thrown to. Obviously, it was either another person who didn't play by the rules, or it was done on purpose. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to investigate the situation in Qiyuan city. It was not that the Qi Yuan did not expect this to happen. However, they did not expect that the other prince would do this in person. Since they did not keep an eye on him from the beginning, it would be very difficult to find him now. Especially if the other party deliberately hid his whereabouts and acted alone, then it would be impossible to find him in a short time. After all, the former Wei and Qi Yuan's cultural heritage were basically the same. If they randomly found an inconspicuous piece of clothing and the capital was so big, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It would be extremely difficult to find a person. Luqingdi and the others were in a dilemma. Although the former Wei prince could not find anything special in the capital even if he asked around, after all, the real secrets would not be spread among the people. He could not enter a place that was not among the people and would not be able to find out anything. It seemed that there was nothing to worry about. However, that was not the case. After all, that was a prince of another country. If something happened to him in Qi Yuan's capital, it would lead to a diplomatic problem between the two countries. Therefore, people who didn't play by the rules were hated no matter where they went. Even so, they had to find him as soon as possible. Luqingdi rubbed his forehead and passed down the order to the city guards to find him. How could they find him if they did not know him? Not to mention Luqingdi, many court officials sneered. Looking for him was just for show. If something really happened, as long as he did not die, he deserved it. Who asked him to run around? There was something wrong with the Qi Yuan people's character. How could they bully outsiders? Truly sorry, Qiyuan had always been a country of etiquette. Under normal circumstances, they were warm and hospitable, but if someone provoked them first, the people of Qiyuan were also not pushovers, and could be pinched as they pleased. Therefore, if something really happened, it was your own problem. As for the prince of the former Wei, he was indeed strolling around the capital. Compared to what he had expected, he was much more high profile. He had 4 guards with him, and he himself was also quite eye-catching. His height was basically comparable to Li Hongyuan's. He had a pair of long legs and his eyes were slightly blue. It was obvious that he had the blood of a different race in his body. Comparatively speaking, Qiyuan capital was already very cold. 2 or 3 layers of clothes were considered normal. Those who had slightly weaker physiques were already wearing thin cotton clothes. However, this prince was clearly wearing a piece of clothing. The waist was tight, the collar was wide open, and a large area of strong chest muscles could be seen. Moreover, his entire person was filled with a kind of feeling of strength from head to toe. He did not feel cold at all. In addition to his good looks, he was naturally very eye-catching. Apparently, he was used to the feeling of being in the limelight. He did not feel uncomfortable at all as he walked. When he saw someone selling fruits, he took them and left. It was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. The peddler was afraid and wanted money again and again. After all, it was not easy for people like him to make a living. At this moment, the guard behind him threw a silver tael over. The peddler hurriedly caught the silver tael. It was obvious that the silver tael was worth at least 2 taels. To be honest, even if he sold all the fruits in his stall, it would not cost so much money. He was an honest person. He said bluntly that he could not give the silver tael. The guard sneered and looked at him with disdain. You don't have to give the silver tael. It's your reward. Then, he followed his master and continued walking. Generally speaking, being able to sell it for money was naturally something to be happy about. However, the other party's attitude was as if the money was not for people, but for bugs. That was an extreme insult to people. The peddler was also an upright person and was doing his part to earn money. One had to know that fruits were not easy to obtain in such weather. He had also put in a lot of effort to get these fruits. He also had a conscience and did not sell them for a particularly high price. Now that he was holding this piece of silver, his eyes turned red with anger. However, it was still a silver tael. He could not just throw it away. The peddler stood there for a while. The person next to him should be an acquaintance who understood his temper. He wanted to persuade him to let it go and not make things difficult for the silver tael. The peddler decisively asked someone to help him look after his stall, and then went to the nearest bank. It was not a big bank, and it was not targeted at the upper class. Occasionally, the commoners would go to exchange money, and they would be received politely. The peddler went in and asked to exchange the silver tael for copper coins. 1 tael for 1,000 copper coins. This was the normal way of exchange. However, when it came to the bank, 1 tael of silver was exchanged for 1,000 copper coins. If you wanted to exchange copper coins for silver, you would need at least 1,100 copper coins to exchange for 1 tael of silver. It was exactly 2 taels of silver in exchange for 2,000 copper coins. What went in was a small piece, but what came out was a big bag. The peddler returned to his stall and only took the few copper coins that he deserved. He wrapped up the rest and asked someone to help him look after it. It seemed that he was going to return the money. However, originally, he only needed to twist the silver tael and exchange it for 5 copper coins. It was more than enough and convenient to carry around. Now that he had changed it all, he was angry as expected. Another person took a fruit from the stall. Of course, the other party threw down a few copper coins. As he chewed on the fruit, he said, "You want to return the money? Give it to me, I'll help you." All right, stop looking at me suspiciously. Even if I don't have money, I won't take this little bit of money from you. I just don't like some people. As he spoke, he pulled a person over. He's my family's guard. I'll give him to you. When I return the money, I'll come back to get him. The fruit had already been finished. He threw away the core in his hand, grabbed the bag of money, and quickly went in the direction that a certain prince had left. Since he was so ostentatious, he was not afraid that he would not be able to find him. "Young master, wait." One of the guards who followed him was asked to leave, and the others followed him. The peddler was also shocked by this development. The guard who was left behind was much calmer. "It's fine. Continue to sell your things. I guarantee that this matter has nothing to do with you. You guys, our young master is from General He's residence. He's from the Northeast Army. I don't know if you know." I know. The peddler hurriedly nodded. He was even a little excited. Although the Northeast Army was not particularly famous, this peddler happened to have a biological brother in the Northeast Army. Therefore, he knew more about the Northeast Army than the average person. When he heard that he was General He's young master, his feelings naturally rose. The entire He family was stationed in the northeast of Chiyuan. This year, General He brought his family back to the capital. When he left, he only took one son with him. In the entire capital, this was considered a big matter. There were quite a lot of people who knew about it. The peddler stretched his head to look at He Hai's consciousness, but the other party had already disappeared. The guard's expression of reverence towards the peddler twitched. If he knew what kind of nature their young master had, he probably would not be like this. Even if he did not hide, he would not be too far off from Gui Jianchou. That, brother, you should hurry and follow them. The other party is not to be trifled with. If there's a conflict, what if the young master suffers? It's fine. The young master won't suffer. However, when he thought about it, the other party's guard carried a knife with him. The style of the knife was different from the ones in Qiyuan. It was impossible for them not to know that the young master did not care about the outside world and only wanted to find someone to fight. Especially when the He family's women and children would be living in the capital in the future. If they wanted to gain a foothold in the capital, they naturally had to have a thorough understanding of the capital's affairs. Otherwise, if they fell, they would not know which immortal they had bumped into. Therefore, the old madam and madam had repeatedly warned them to pay attention to whatever happened recently. In Qiyuan, if one saw a guard who could carry a blade, they would definitely be part of the imperial family, and the type with a very high status. There was no need to talk about those in the imperial palace. Outside, it would definitely be the various imperial residences. However, those who did not belong to Qiyuan, but had similar treatment, their identities were very easy to guess. To be honest, these former military men would naturally hold reverence towards the people of their own country's royal family. But for the people of other countries, it was not the same. As long as you were the one who stirred up trouble first, then sorry, no matter if you were a prince or a prince, they would dare to beat you up first. Not to mention the former Wei, they were definitely the archenemy of Qiyuan. Therefore, even if they knew that their young master might go against the other party, they did not have the intention to stop it. He Hai's consciousness was a tyrant in the northeastern border town. However, he was selective about who he wanted to bully. He would not bully ordinary people. According to him, it was meaningless to bully those who could not fight back. It would be satisfying if both parties could fight. Therefore, it was one thing for He Hai to dislike the people of the former Wei. More importantly, he was itching for a fight. In his opinion, that person just now might be a good opponent. If He Hai had the opportunity to fight with Li Hongyuan, he should not be itching for a fight. However, these few days, the gates of Jin Qin Wang Fu were closed to him. During this period of time, Jin Qin Wang did not want to pay attention to him. He even became a little bored. Grandmother and his mother repeatedly warned him not to cause trouble. Only God knew how boring it was for him to bring people out for a stroll. Finally, he encountered a problem, and it was the kind that he had a reason to look for. How could he let it go? The He family's creed was not to take the initiative to cause trouble. Their duty was to protect the country, and bullying the weak was something they could not do. However, if someone bullied them, the He family would definitely not be afraid. When facing their enemies, they would definitely not show any mercy. He Hai may not know about the matter of the former Wei entering the capital of Qiyuan, but he had an absolute understanding of weapons. He may not be able to distinguish the other things, but based on that blade, he knew that these people were from the former Wei. The peddler was weak and was one of their own. He was bullied by the enemy. As a He family member, what else could he say? Fight back. He Hai, who was itching for a fight, was simply too self-confident. Even if the peddler went to exchange for money, that group of people did not go too far. He Hai casually asked and quickly chased after them. He Hai directly stepped forward to block the way, with an arrogant look. I say, brother, a fruit does not cost that much money. You think you have a lot of money, but we Qiyuan are more particular about how much money we have. Therefore, this young master will work a little harder and send the money back to you. That former Wei prince's bodyguard saw that something was wrong and immediately pulled out the blade at his waist. He Zhihai didn't take it seriously and even smiled with a little excitement. When that imperial prince saw He Hai's expression, he knew that this person was not the same as ordinary people. His fear of death was not simple. Therefore, he reached out to stop his bodyguard. This little bit of money, this imperial prince really does not care about it. That peddler did not have it easy to buy these fruits. I will reward him. That will not do. Everyone in Qiyuan may be poor, but they are ambitious. Here, take it. He raised his hand and threw the cloth bag over. Although the cloth bag was tied tightly, the rope that connected the copper coins had been broken by He. When he threw it, the other party subconsciously blocked it. Almost 2,000 copper coins fell out. Although it was not enough to hurt anyone, the scene was exciting enough. He frowned. Even if you are an imperial prince, no matter how much money you have, you should not waste it like this. Could it be that your old man did not teach you that as a member of the imperial family, you should be diligent and thrifty and be an example to the world? Doing this, not only will you damage your own virtue, you will also implicate your own country. As he said this, he shook his head and sighed. The former Wei prince was so angry that he laughed. In the former Wei, he was also arrogant and despotic. If he wanted wind, he would get wind. If he wanted rain, he would get rain. He was a person who was exceptionally favored. He was the type who would argue with the heavens, the earth, and his brothers. Of course, he was still too far away from Li Hongyuan. At least, he did not dare to argue with his old man. Fortunately, he had never encountered a situation like today. Deliberately looking for trouble? Little Yi, I only do what I think should be done. Humiliating my Qiyuan's people, it is my duty to seek justice for them. If you think this is looking for trouble, then it is. Little tyrant, he actually had a time when he spoke such high-sounding words. Was this a talent that he originally knew? In the past, there was no need for him to speak, so he did not speak. Or was it the result of Jin Qinhuang's teaching? It was debatable. Since that was the case, then what else was there to say? Just directly fight. In any case, both of them were masters who used their fists to solve problems. In that instant, it was as if the heavenly lightning had ignited the earthly fire. All of a sudden, there was an explosion. Since the masters had already started to fight, there was no need to say anything about the people below. Naturally, they also started to fight. However, it was 4 against 3, a knife against a fist. Because He Jihai's people were all military men, they had seen blood and been stained with life, so they naturally fought valiantly. Even if they were short of weapons, they would not be at a disadvantage for a while. However, they stayed in the He family as guards because their bodies were injured. After a long time, they would definitely not be able to hold on. However, at this moment, they simply did not care. When the former Wei prince fought in his own territory, he had never lost. Of course, he did not rule out the fact that others did not dare to fight with him. However, he also admitted that he was really strong. However, He Jihai was stronger than him. Moreover, when facing the Qin Wang of Qiyuan, his own father and brothers, he would not show any mercy. Now, he was even more impolite. Moreover, he did not know if it was because he had been hung up and beaten by Qin Wang during this period of time, but He Jihai, who had never been interested in hanging up and beating others, was very excited at this time. It turned out that abusing people would be very, very refreshing. Thus, his actions became even more ruthless. The former Wei prince probably did not expect this situation. Even if his strength was not good enough, the other party should have shown mercy. He had just entered the capital of Qiyuan and dared to beat him to death. Was he not afraid of causing a dispute between the two countries? Therefore, he could only consider himself unlucky to have met a lunatic like He Jihai. He Jihai's 4th guard arrived late and saw the scene of real fire. Speaking of which, he was a very rational person. With a young master like He Jihai, if there was no rational person to suppress the situation, who knew what would happen? If they continued to fight, it might not be fatal. However, the other party's status was honorable. Although his young master was the son of a general, he himself was a commoner. There was a great disparity in status. No matter who was right or wrong, in the end, his young master would definitely suffer. Therefore, he needed someone to suppress the situation and protect his young master. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.